I'm the voice, and this is Divi Updates, episode 24. I've got Rob, and I've got Neegs. How's it going, guys?
Good. How is everybody?
I'm doing
pretty
great.
good.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
wow.
don't
The
have-
enthusiasm.
It's fantastic. I'm doing fantastic.
Hey,
There you
we've
go.
been like in a market that is very hard to predict. It's
Yeah.
been going up, going down.
I don't know,
it's
Neeks. You've been doing pretty
stabilizing.
good.
I've been
What?
paying your Patreon channel,
Yeah,
and
Neeks,
I
you've
need
been
to
doing
see
pretty
some
good.
results.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was like, more luck than anything. I hadn't looked at anything. I just threw it like that because I felt like there was momentum, but could have
That's
been
what your
5,000
Patreon looks
down.
like.
It would have been
It
the same.
looks like you just threw up some things in there and expect me to pay $25 a month.
Yeah.
Oh,
Excuse me.
You mean the slander you made with your fake screenshot?
Yes, exactly. I expect to get some Divi inside information too, by the way. So,
Well, this is the place
that's what
for it.
that's all about.
Yeah, I think you are watching the right video if you want that.
Anyway.
All right. Let's talk about stuff. Let's talk about general news, crypto news.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, so recently we had a little burst in Bitcoin. That was fun. Went up to, what did it go up to? 97?
I think we hit 97 and then
Yeah.
we took a little breath.
Yeah.
So now we're at like 94.
Kind of
We
like
took a little breath.
inflated
We had
and
a little bit of a stomach drop there when it was at like 83, 81, somewhere in there. It really like
Yeah.
last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and then it looks, I don't know, maybe this is a new level, who knows. What I do know is only what I've heard, because again, I'm not a trader. I don't know jack shit about this. But I can definitely relate what I hear. So what I'm hearing almost more off, I'd say more often than not, but I'd say almost 100%, in fact, is that we're looking at some kind of recovery both in Bitcoin and alts later in the summer, is what I'm hearing.
So
I can't even tell you more accurate or
you have to
how
pay
good
for
it is.
Neegs'
I'm just telling you what I'm
Patreon
hearing.
to find out.
Right.
Yeah.
But what we see is that people are, let's say, more, they have higher hopes. It was pretty dark in the last few months with, the tariff and everything that happened. And of course, we had this big drop in Bitcoin. But now that we recovered and we're trading basically between like 90 and 100K, people are rebuilding, hopes for Bitcoin to go for another leg. And in reality, we're recording, it's May 6th. So we're getting close. We're getting close to summer. And I think it is looking good for the one who had the theory that the bull market still had a leg, and not the ones who said we're now going to the bear market.
Yeah,
I think that's.
I will tell you one other thing now that you've mentioned the tariffs, because I think it's important. We'll talk more about Token 2049 later. But what I talked to a lot of investors, both American investors and investors in other countries. And what I see is the American investors are really hyped up, like really excited about what's happening here. We finally have an administration that's on our side. We have, we're still early in crypto, so now America can really take the lead on this, move forward on this. So a lot of optimism there. The foreign investors that I talked to, and this is still crypto investors, the foreign investors that I talked to are really holding off. Their feeling is like, we don't know what Trump is going to do tomorrow. And they're very hesitant about investing because they can't predict about, like, it just looks like his actions look completely random to them. And it's like, so we might do something, and then tomorrow it's painful because he decided to be mad at something. That's the way it's looking, or that's my experience with talking with investors, American investors and outside.
And I think beyond anyone's opinion on if it makes sense or not, this is the feeling of some people, and that's what
Yeah.
it's important to understand.
Yeah.
You won't convince those people that there is a strategy if they have money to invest and they're careful with that money, because obviously if they have money, they want to have more. So
Yeah.
they are careful about what they do, and uncertainty is definitely the thing that is the scariest for someone who wants to deploy some resource. So yeah, and I think it is also something that is to be expected, at least temporarily, right? Until things get more clear about the direction that we're really going to, or the direction that America is going to, and the position it wants to take in the trade relationship. So it is definitely not solved, like we were saying, like I was saying, that we're not trading between 90 and 100K. We don't know if tomorrow there is a new declaration and we have a
Right.
new storm coming our head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we go down to 70 or we go up to 120. Like, we don't know. And the investors don't like that. They like volatility, but they don't like they like the volatility that happening a little bit more organically rather than one person on the entire globe deciding to make a decision one way or another. I will say also that domestic and foreign investors, when I speak to them, all kind of have a general feeling. I don't know that there's any concrete. Nobody really said it's because of this, but a general feeling that quote unquote like this tariff nonsense will stop like towards the end of the summer, which is a lot of the reason why people think there's going to be
I see.
like a pump at the end of the summer. They think the kind of way things play out is that people do come to America. They talk to Trump's team and Trump about how to about like negotiate something in a way that Trump can claim a bunch of wins because something got negotiated, and then the seesaw of tariffs will stop. Like we'll get into some sort of, we'll move on to the next thing he wants to do, and it won't be tariffs anymore. That's kind of what the idea is there.
Yeah, and it can't be like that for 6 months, right? Because
Right.
otherwise it would be in a much worse situation.
Yeah.
Obviously, they
I think-
have to get agreement with everybody, and it just looks like what's going to happen. So
I
it would be
think in a
interesting to see.
non-crypto sense, just in a non-crypto sense, just an investor sense, you're right. The average crypto person or even non-crypto person that's in crypto, they want the volatility. That means they want to see green. That means they want to buy cheap and they want to sell expensive so they can
Well,
get back
they
into
like
fiat
red
or
too.
something else. Well, they like
Oh, yeah.
red if they can buy, but that is the experienced, the one who has the stomach for it. When you speak about something like Trump, they don't mind that people have influence. McAfee used to have that kind of influence. CZ used to have that kind of influence. Elon has that kind of influence. So people don't mind it. The problem is that there is an unsettling that Trump has, because I think many people have their own biases. That includes media and those kinds of things. And so they interpret things the way they want to interpret them. And because of the unsettling, they just feel uncomfortable. And so Trump is Trump. He's always been this way. If you ever watch The Apprentice, he acts the same way as he did on The Apprentice. It's always been. He is just who he is. But I think when you travel the world or you speak to other people, there's just wildly different points of view on what's going on in the US. And that causes an underlying state of being uncomfortable. It's not even underlying, it's just obvious. They're uncomfortable. And so that could have
But
an
I think that's
investment
why
issue.
he's doing it like that. Like, because in reality, in the West, and
Yeah.
it's difficult for me to talk about places I'm not in, right? But I'm in Switzerland, and I'm also very familiar with how it is in France. And if you want things to move, you better be patient. And it doesn't look like it's Trump's strategy, right? Trump's strategy is I
At
have
all.
the power, so I'm not going to be patient. So you're going to get on the table. Otherwise, it's going to be the worst deal you can expect from us, right? And
Yeah.
yes, it makes everything shaking very, very hard. But we will see. We will see if he
Yeah, we'll
succeeds
see.
in that.
But so there's general consensus about like I'm saying end of summer. Like, that could be July and it could be September, or
Right.
October. Who knows what end of summer really means? But really, I think that the idea is that he's going to move on from this, claim some wins, move on, and then that part, the on and off and changing of various tariffs will stop, and we'll probably move on to
Right.
something else.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think that
Cool.
was so that seems good.
So despite all that, whatever happens, there's someone who is always buying Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and that's Michael Saylor. So I want
Yeah.
to talk about that a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit because I think I just saw a news that says that he now has 553,555 Bitcoin. So that's like 500,000 Bitcoin in one hands, where no proof of reserve, like there is nothing. Like basically, people buy his shares, right? So his financial product, because it's not really shares, his financial product, and it's basically like paper Bitcoin. Like he could, like he doesn't
Yeah.
have to have Bitcoin for what he's doing, and that sounds crazy to me. Like I understand it's kind of a tether situation. Like it has very bad aspects that are not crypto, but it also like supports a lot of the crypto adoption. So it is
Yeah.
a complicated situation.
It is. So
I
just to put context there, that is 2.6% of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist. And it's an even larger percent of the crypto that will ever be available, because there's a bunch of crypto that's forever lost. And
Sure.
I don't know what that number is, but it's more than 2.6% then. So like, and it's funny because a lot of people are, especially a lot of maxis, are very excited about this because, and I think every crypto sees this, right? Like when somebody important buys your crypto, there's validation, right? And so
Right.
I think there's a lot of maxis going, with BlackRock and with Saylor, all going, "Yay, validated!" And we're on the right team. And so so I think, and that helps promote and further validate, the idea of Bitcoin being a legitimate asset to own. But unlike proof of stake, that's the other thing. Since it's not proof of stake, it's not like he himself by himself with all these coins can control the network. That's really that's miners. So those are separate. Like in
Mhm.
Divi, you got proof of stake. If you get a lot of coins, you've got the ability to wield a lot of power. Whereas that's not the case for Bitcoin. And so
Right.
yeah, I don't really know. Other than that, I don't
There's
know
no
really
governance.
what to
So
make of it.
I,
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point that you bring about the percentage of supply. I don't think I would have a problem if somebody would have just 3% of the supply of Bitcoin. What I have a problem with is that MicroStrategy is selling financial products where
Sure.
they say they're selling for Bitcoin, and then they're supposed to have those 553,000 plus Bitcoin. And again, there is no proof of that. And it is, again, a centralized entity that is now selling in indices. Like they're not selling Bitcoin, right? They
Right.
keep the Bitcoin. So this is where I have a more problem with, right? I
Yeah.
don't have much of a problem with someone holding like 2 or 3% of the supply, even if it has its own risk, obviously. But here it's more like it's not really his. There is
Yeah.
a shady thing around. There is a lot of returns that are promised to people who invest in those products. So if that thing were to collapse, or if Bitcoin were to have an issue, uh, that would be something that would increase the problem, right? Like if Bitcoin
Mhm.
was to have a big dump, then
Yeah.
MicroStrategy could probably not sustain what they're offering. And in that case, they would probably have to dump what they have. And that would make the thing even worse, right? So
Even worse.
that's more
Yeah.
the things I'm more concerned about.
I mean, the
I
history is
mean,
that he has not dumped, right? Like
I'll
Bitcoin has
Yes.
gone down
yeah.
70% or whatever.
I mean, it's
But
reported when he buys, and it gets publicized when the buys happen. And you have obviously like there's a website bitbo.io. Bit what is that? That's almost bitboyo. Where they I know, where they show the micro strategy, but again, that's still different than, let's say, having an address
Oh yeah, they
online where
don't
you can
prove
see
the
their cold
reserve.
storage is,
That's
right?
right.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so that's maybe there is. Maybe I just haven't find it.
no,
Maybe I'm
I'm looking,
naive
but
and maybe it's
I
out
don't
there.
see one.
Yeah, so there's no cold address to just watch. But maybe they do that on purpose because when they want to sell something, they want to sell it and do what they want to do and make sure their investors are taken care of.
For sure, but as they are a registered company, they still
Hmm.
have to file things when they buy and sell and all that. I think it is pretty regulated. I'm not sure about Bitcoin,
Yeah,
but as they're doing that, but yeah, what is they are not proving to anybody else. That's for sure,
Hmm.
yeah.
and we've
Here's
seen
what I
that.
don't get. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say
Yeah.
we've seen many stories like FTX and others where people claim one thing on one side, but in fact there are a lot of holes, and the bigger those entities become, the more dangerous they become for the whole ecosystem. It is more where I was going.
If a MicroStrategy is the value of MicroStrategy is basically the Bitcoin it owns. Like I think it has like some products, but like I think honestly it's the Bitcoin. Why is the stock market cap worth 3x more than the Bitcoin it owns?
Right. So
I don't have
that's
any
the
idea.
thing, because it works like a future,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because based on past performance of MicroStrategy, now they expect that Bitcoin will be more valued later. So it has
Yeah.
already the future
It's already
valuation
priced
in
in the
the.
value in the future. Right. Right.
That's
It
right.
assumes
Interesting.
Bitcoin will be 3x of what it is, and that's the value of it. Like so if you think Bitcoin will go 10x, you should buy MicroStrategy,
That's
right?
right. So
Because
what one of the things you could say is 3x Bitcoin is already priced in MicroStrategy.
yeah,
That's kind of what
So
it
when
looks like,
when they
right?
sell the shares, or when investors buy in, the what is it, the MSTR or the
hmm
STRK, what are the common, and then the STRK?
So they
What
have a
does
first
ATM
one,
mean? Help me.
and they
Um,
basically raised money that they
yeah,
say they would buy Bitcoin with, right? And then now they will have a
correct.
second product, I believe, and then they will do exactly the
Yeah,
same. They're raising another, I think 40 billion or something like that, maybe 80
yeah,
billion.
yeah.
So
80
yeah,
billion. Yeah, so they did 128 and 51 million for 180.3 million in these micro strategy offerings of
so the
shares of two
MSTR,
different kinds,
right?
MSTR and STRK. And then with that,
Oh,
they
right.
acquired the 1895, which had a total aggregate purchase price of 180.3 million. So yeah, their total holdings reported is 55,000. Excuse me, 555,450. Yeah.
Yeah. So
anyway,
anyway, we won't solve that case,
No,
nope,
yeah,
nope.
but it
I
exactly.
mean,
was
they're
more,
gonna
yeah,
do what they're gonna do.
yeah. But I just see like people clapping to that, like, yeah, that's great, go
Yeah,
Michael Saylor, and I think that sure, that's really great that there is something happening, and that there is a more standard investment option. That's not the ETF. That's kind of something new. However, I think it can still be dangerous if the gap between what is the valuation of that thing and then what it actually owns, it becomes extremely dangerous, especially if it owns 3% of the supply or
right,
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
right,
definitely.
right. Uh, so the next thing we could talk about is like I think it's most people feel that we've won the right to exist. Right,
Sure.
and right. So when I say we, I mean the crypto industry,
Right.
blockchain industry. It seems like we've won the right to exist, and like that was questionable for a while. But so if we won the right to exist, then I think the opponents of crypto have lost. I don't think there's two winners in this. I mean, we might consider them winners because now they can have it even if they didn't want it. But I think
Uh,
the vociferous opponents of crypto have lost. So what is their next battle? Anyone?
that's privacy. That's
Yeah.
privacy.
Yeah. Right. So we've been talking about, as an industry, we're like, hey, what's your problem with blockchains? Everything is public. It's more public than your stupid fiat system right
Yeah,
now. Like, these are all the advantages. This is great, and you can track every transaction. And in fact, domestic and federal and international entities have in fact followed blockchain transactions and got bad guys that way.
absolutely.
And like, yay, right? We don't want bad guys. We want everybody to be able to do whatever they want, but we don't, people harming people, we don't want. So yay. So now they're like, okay, well, we don't want private crypto. And so like what we're talking about here is like Monero, and anywhere where the ability to track funds gets obfuscated by the blockchain itself. And that's so that's a new challenge, because I, as a human being with my own rights, I do want to be able to obfuscate my funds sometimes, like, because it's my right. And in the same right, it's like I should be able to close the curtains in my house and you not look
Yeah.
in. And
Well, for the
so
same reason, I'm paying Neeks to build me a website, and I'm paying you to build another website, and I paid Neeks 1 Bitcoin, but I only want to pay you a 0.25 Bitcoin.
you jerk.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, it just gives an example of, if
Yeah.
everything is public like that, one project may not be worth another.
Yeah.
It also may be because you did something else. What I pay you is what I pay you, is what we agreed to. It's there is privacy in all things that we do, and there's negotiations in things that we do, and it just makes
Yeah. So
it's
so there are
skewed
there's
to
a
interpret it.
spectrum of
Mhm.
of privacy, right? So there's some privacy with Bitcoin because everything is, it's really hard to keep uh your um your funds addresses unattached to your identity, because most people, like lots of people, are still buying. Actually, most people, I think, buy on an exchange, and as soon as you do that, wherever you send those funds is the launching point for tracking your identity.
Correct.
And so,
But when you go
um,
to fiat, it's attached, right?
yeah,
Pure
right. So,
hosed.
so in or out, that's the point where they can track you. And so, since tons of people do that, that's kind of, it's hard to keep your anonymity in public blockchains like Bitcoin. So Monero exists, but Monero has a problem too. Even for, just forget governments, forget using it. It's like, it's annoying. Like, you don't want always private either, right? So like, that's annoying too. Like, if I need to prove something to you that something happened, that's hard to do on those chains, because you can't track anything. Like, it's part of the design.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now there are blockchains, like, the one that I'm most familiar with right now is Midnight, which is one of IOHK's products. It's not an offshoot of Cardano. It's another blockchain. The way they work is private, but you can disable the privacy. Maybe that's the wrong word. You can open the privacy to the
Mhm.
people who you want to open it to. To me, that's the right answer. To me, it's like everything private between channels, between you and me and you and the other person, and so forth. But if I need to prove something to somebody,
Yeah.
I can open it up and
Well, that's
and
so when you look
see
at
it.
Mimblewimble, it's a similar way. Look at the way that they implemented it in Litecoin. You can use legacy and other types of addresses, and it's fine, but some places like exchange and those kinds of things will not accept anything that's
Right.
on
So
that. Mhm.
that's an important component, right? So Litecoin, as you say, does that, but then it's very separated. Like when you use Mimblewimble, um, basically your funds are now tainted. because
That
every
would be true.
centralized exchange and all that, they will not take it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
So
censorship based upon, what do they call that? Not provenance, but it's related to that, where it's got the
yeah, yeah,
history.
because
It's
you
attached
have
to
Weighted.
a moment, a person, place, or thing, and it's either valuable or maybe it's less valuable based upon that. And so what you're saying is, in this case, like if it's Tornado Cash and Ethereum, you're damaged goods if you receive some ETH that was eventually, 100
right.
days ago came through Tornado Cash.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So to take your analogy, Rob, when you take the battle one, I think
Yeah.
that there is a permanent and never ending war between the centralized entity and the individuals for
Yes.
control, and
Hmm.
Yes.
especially government. And I think, as you said, we won the battle. We won the battle of having all the crypto being banned, right?
Yeah.
And now they acknowledge that we won this battle. So now they are trying to take a seat. That's what the good news we're hearing about everywhere. But also, they didn't stop the war. So now they're trying to make our advance the shortest possible. And obviously, for that, they will try to have the most control about our blockchain coins and whatever happens there. And so the move from EU is exactly that. They are going in line with all the financial regulations that you have with fiat, and they basically want these to apply to crypto. And they don't want any funds moving around that they don't know from where it is coming, who it is for, and of course, they use the same excuse of funding terrorism and all of
Yeah.
that. But clearly, they want this control. And I think that now that it is pretty clear that we won the other battle, I think now this is the battle of now. Like we will have to make a lot more work to get our privacy, because
Yeah.
otherwise blockchain will not be that much better than fiat. If we don't get that part, it's just going to end up the same, right?
And it's
So,
also a harder
Mhm.
battle because the whole idea of like what are you hiding is very strong with lots of
that's right.
people. I experience it almost on a daily basis. Like if you got nothing to hide, and I have to explain like that's not how this works. Like I can have nothing to hide, and also still like need it hidden from people around me or things like that. Like I just there's places where privacy always works. Like there's a ton of people on the internet. Naomi Brockwell is the one that I think of the most because she herself experienced harm from her inability to maintain her privacy.
Yeah.
And so, and it doesn't matter that it doesn't happen to everyone every day. What it matters is that when it happens, it's hugely damaging.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's like, yeah, great. A million people didn't have something bad happen, but the one person was devastated from having a privacy issue. And the governments don't want to protect those people because they want to remove this ability to make assets private. Now, again, I'm going to point back to midnight again. The whole idea, uh, the nuance that they have is like if the government's getting to a roadblock on with their privacy coin, they could go and ask that person to uncover the thing, and they can choose to or not, and they could individually fight that battle. That's a better condition than just saying no privacy. Um, and,
I understand, but
yeah.
the problem is based on the regulation. As if you look at this EU regulation, they're basically saying no centralized party is supposed to accept any funds that are coming and that they don't know where they are coming from.
Oh, so sorry. I'm saying that's a better condition. I'm not saying any government anywhere will understand the nuance and
Oh,
incorporate
okay,
anything
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No,
like
that's for
that,
sure.
that's
Yeah,
the
no,
part that will never happen. So therefore, we as an industry should be fighting hard to maintain
yeah, we
privacy
have to win
because
it. it.
they're not gonna do something in the middle.
Look, I think it's very clear that this battle, like for those who have been in crypto in the last, I don't know, I've been here since 2017, and I realized that in the privacy battle, we are way earlier than when I joined crypto in 2017 for decentralization, right? Like very clearly, it will be a very hard battle. We are in an era where people sell their privacy for less advertising or more access to whatever. Like people are really, really not very much concerned about their privacy.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think it will be a lot longer process from now. But again, it means that it is early for that process. But I think it is unavoidable. Like in the end, people will get money, like they suffer a lot from that, even if they don't realize it because it's not direct a lot of time, it's indirect. But the consequences of that are definitely bad. So I hope we will win that battle, but I think it will
Yep.
be a long one.
And probably whatever rule they come up with, there'll be a way around it. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
like, that's the way this industry works. And actually that's the way like free markets work. Like you put up a rule, there's going to be a way around it. And it happens every single time. And legislators keep doing stupid stuff.
Oh, but it's not complicated. Like basically now those anonymous currencies, they are in the same place Bitcoin was in 15 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
you
There's
know.
that too. But even with the idea of like not accepting funds that have been tainted with privacy, what a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, there eventually all the coins will be tainted with privacy. Eventually that will happen. And then what are you going to do? Then you're going to say, oh, well, hasn't been private for 50 transactions or something like that. So then people will just send 50 transactions. And like, no matter what rule they make, there will be a way around it. It won't be a convenient way, but it
Right.
always happens that way.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. And
Okay.
then
Anything else? Oh yeah, there's more. Lawsuits.
to yeah. Okay, we'll talk about
We
that.
don't have to spend much. I think everybody knows this. Like Trump got in a lot of lawsuits, got dropped. We got some
Yeah.
guidelines,
Yeah, and
things
there's the
like
new
that.
guy, in
New
the
Yeah,
people,
SEC.
new people sworn in. Exactly.
yeah,
Right, the
yeah.
new
So
chairman, and he's like saying that his mission is to clarify investment in crypto and make everything more clear. So
yeah,
that's a good news.
that's
We'll
good
see.
news. But you got to remember, like, who's at the table clarifying it for him, because it's not always
Right.
good news, right? Like
No,
having
that's
a
for
clear
sure.
set of rules is not the same thing as having a good set of rules.
Yeah.
That's
Without
true,
naming
but
names, we looked at that list. So, it's,
yeah.
that's true, but
it
it
is
seems
all about
it's better
who's
than not
who and
having
help
rules.
making those
Yes,
decisions.
it's definitely better. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay. Divi news.
Cool. So you're just back from. You actually
Yeah. So,
went to two events, but you talked a little bit about the previous one last time, I believe.
so I went to
But
Paris, and then I
right,
just got back a couple of days ago from Dubai, and Dubai that was the largest. That is the largest. I call it a blockchain event or crypto event. That there's two of them. These bring like tens of thousands of people to them. One's in Singapore and one is in Dubai. They're both called Token 2049. Uh, it is not, there's Bitcoin stuff, but it's not Bitcoin centric, unlike the one that's coming up soon in Las Vegas, which is Bitcoin centric. But so this one had everything. It is still dominated by AI, but I will also tell you that I got the feeling that people are getting kind of tired of AI plus crypto. There is stuff there to do. I saw some neat stuff, people making cool platforms, but the question always comes up is what's the crypto for? And
Yeah.
inevitably it's cheaper with crypto, right? You use crypto and it's cheaper, but it's not necessarily better. And so over and over again, really, let's be honest, most of the utility coins or tokens are really fundraising devices and not actually providing utility you can't have otherwise. So there's tons and tons of that. Games and AI basically dominating most of that. But there were so many events. Like I only went to the all day long events to talk about like what we're doing for the technology that Divi's going to be using. and to talk about other possibilities with it. And we got a lot of positive reinforcement. Again, really, I'm every time I go to these things, I'm more and more convinced that like this thing that we're doing for Divi Side Chains is the right thing going forward. This may not be well accepted this cycle, but there's definitely movement this way. But that said, it was mostly dominated by AI and games. And the other thing that is huge continues to be remittances. So like cross-border payments using crypto. That is absolutely 100% a true use case for crypto. And like every time I go to these conferences, I see more and more people onboarding people into crypto in third world nations, in particular Africa, less so Latin America. But there are a lot of people being onboarded to crypto being better than their fiat system, crypto being better than to get money from out of from other countries back into Africa. All of that part there's a lot of action there, getting cross-border payments up and running. Lots of companies doing it to the point where I'm confused at the differences. There's some slight differences, but there's millions and millions of people there, and there's lots and lots of companies onboarding millions of people in Africa to do this. So it's a really, that part of it is really encouraging to see. I really like it.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Other than that,
good.
I think maybe people can ask questions and I can answer them. But those are the big things I see at these things. I got Bitcoin coming up at the end of this month.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's
Las
another
Vegas.
huge conference. But it's more Bitcoin focused. The conference itself has a lot of like mining companies in there, both producing mining equipment, mining peripherals. They are also like mining farms are there. And then a lot of talk about like different aspects of Bitcoin. This is at the event. Along with the event, there's, hundreds of side events also, just like in Nashville last year. And I'll let you know how that goes.
Perfect. Cool. So I can already hear the questions. The questions is when are we? When are we going?
When a dollar.
Yeah.
$1.
So I mean, it's still the same, right? The progress with the partner is going very well, but we still, like, as we said multiple times, especially in Discord and Telegram, um, it's not something where we have 20%, 50%, 100% progress. It will really be just, like a switch, right? Like that's when we reach the target that things start. So until then, we really try to give you the most information about how it's going, and then give you those updates. And I mean, I think we still have the Polkadot Jam update that we didn't publish because we talk a lot about the other topics. But yeah,
we can publish it today.
yeah. I mean, it depends because we're already at 40 minutes. So, but maybe we can still push it as a separate segment. In any case, we're trying to give you the most detail about the technical difference, the competitive aspect with other projects, and yeah, I think until then, we also have the marketing and the website that are both ready. We talked about that last time. I think the market, like, it has, the last couple of weeks have proven that it was not the right time to deploy those things. It would have been really, like, right time, it would have been a really bad idea. So we're just holding on to that, and then we'll be ready to start whenever the market is better. And I believe that finally, when it will start to reach a new audience to hear about this new technology that we have, I think it will definitely benefit Divi a lot.
Yep.
Definitely. So let's talk about our topic. Let's talk about jam, not peanut butter and jam, but jam.
Not that kind of jam. Yeah. So it's so jam is the new thing on Polkadot. We're going to talk about Polkadot for a bit. I know. So the thing about doing these technical updates is, like, we are definitely, we prefer the Divi model. We prefer the Divi sidechain model. We think that is the best implementation possible of
Yeah.
blockchain, where everything is trustless, where everything is truly as decentralized as possible. That said, the way everything exists is the way it exists. And Polkadot, like every other blockchain, has their silo and their tribe around them. And one
Yeah.
of the things that's not great is that we don't have somebody from the tribe kind of speaking here. That said, Voice and myself and Neeks do try to understand it as best we can,
True.
even and try to recognize the high points and acknowledge the low points, from our point of view. So we do try to give it a fair shake, but it would be better if there was a Polkadot cheerleader here. So I'll
And
just
really, we
acknowledge
also
all
had
that before we. Sorry.
and we also had our engineer, right, who really spent
Yes.
some time looking into it,
Yeah.
Correct.
and really, and I wanted to say that this update on the Polkadot side, I'm asking if they called it jam because they have an issue with their limited parachain, and so
Yeah.
that's why they did this update, right? Because
Right.
they were having some network issue, right? It's not enough. They don't
Yeah.
have
Not
enough to
enough.
scale, like they're completely stuck. And so they trying to find a path to keep growing. And so
Yeah.
they're
Okay, so
making this new option that is actually what others are doing.
Yeah.
this
Right.
new
It was
option.
it was
I want
not.
to say this though.
Right.
I just have to say this because we're going to have the statement from some peoples that wow, you guys are really too technical, and I just want to take 20 seconds and make the statement. Some of the things that we're going to speak about will sound similar, meaning that what they describe and what other blockchains describe sounds similar. You will have people who will mention side chains, and it to you may seem the same when you say side chains or another chain says it. It's no different than when we say staking or proof of stake and you think it's all the same. You don't quite understand that there are technological differences. Please always ask questions
Mhm.
because even as I read the white papers, some of the terms are identical to what we would use, but the meaning that they use them or the definition as they would describe what the meaning to that word would be, that was a whole lot of word salad, is entirely different and it gets confusing. So if you get confused, please just know that I'm confused 99% of the time. I have to reread these things 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 times before I get it. If you listen to this and it sounds like it's just mumbo jumbo, ask me. I
Yeah.
will happily chat with you because it is
Let me
and that's
confusing.
why and that's
let
why
me
we
give.
do that, right?
Yeah.
Like we
Right.
we get often the question like, hey, why are you different? And the
Yes.
reality is, in this industry, I won't say people lie, but
No.
marketing is definitely not the reality, right? And people will use staking, people will use trustless, people will use sidechain. And
Yes.
unless you go and look into the detail, which are technical, then you will not be able to differentiate those. So that's why we're trying
Correct.
to highlight the
Those
architectural
different.
choices of our competitors and
Correct.
why we chose our direction with the partner, and why we think our vision is much more adapted to a scalable system and fully decentralized and trustless system.
Yeah,
Correct.
I have
Correct.
three quick
Correct.
examples. You just mentioned two, but just to go over them. So we'll say staking, and it will mean validating a blockchain and getting rewards for that based on how much of the coin that you have, as opposed to a proof of work
Mhm,
protocol
mhm.
where it's based on how much of a machine you have.
That's right.
Whereas in DeFi, they still call it staking, and it's the same
Correct.
word. It's based on how much you have. You are definitely kind of supporting like a liquidity pool or whatever, and they call it staking because the more you have, the more you get, right? And it's so from that perspective, it's not different. But the reality is staking a blockchain is different than DeFi staking, even though that's the same word. Another one is trustless, right? So we are very clear, the three of us are very clear that trustless means no intermediaries, period.
Correct.
That's right.
No, Where
no decentralized Oracle, no multi-sig anywhere like it
yeah,
is. And unfortunately, this is
and
most
we're in the
trustless
process.
things today are
Yeah,
not
we're in the
trustless.
process of losing the definition of that word because you see it all over the place in terms of bridges, saying it's a trustless bridge when in
Correct.
fact the reality is there's a point of trust that you have to assume, and it's not like you have to trust the BIOS of the machines. We're not talking about that. We're talking about in the chain of actions that happen as it's moved from one place to another. You have to assume somebody doesn't have keys to something, and so the real term for that they used to use was trust minimized.
Yeah.
uh, I say it often. Trust minimized is a lot like saying a little bit pregnant. It's not. It's still trusted. Period.
Yeah.
And trustless means no intermediary, and that's the way we use it, and that's the way it was used before. It's not like we're not using a new version of it. Sending funds from one Bitcoin to address to another Bitcoin address, that's trustless, no intermediary.
Yeah, and trustless means even much more than it's much simpler even than that. Trustless means that if I send it to you, you didn't have to trust me to send it to you, but you can also trust that I sent it
yeah,
because I signed it and I sent the coins from that address. I mean, there's so many different layers of what trustless should be. And you wrap that into self custody, right? Which is what
yeah,
Dexes do not offer self custody.
yeah.
So
That's right.
trustless is it's a huge concept
And
and
And then
and
it's
the
the
a
last
other
crazy
aspect,
word.
and
one
the
I
other
wanted to
aspect
point
is
out was
centralization,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
decentralization, right? Because
yeah,
then if you have 16 validators, it's not decentralized.
right,
If you can't be a validator, it's not decentralized. If you have another level of validators that are called operator or whatever name you want to give them, and then it is a list of 20 or something like that, it's not decentralized, right? So
yes,
these are technical details that you really have to dig into the detail of the architecture, because obviously
Yeah.
those people will not tell you that, right?
yeah.
Finish
Yep.
your
But
thought,
so the
Rob,
opposite.
also.
So I don't think it's the. I think I mean, from our perspective, with these very clear definitions, yes, those projects are outright lying. They're not lying enough. And also, we generally don't use the court system for that kind of things. Like Coke will use it if you say, we're Coke, or something like that.
Right.
But in general, our industry doesn't use court systems to fix stuff. We just go ahead and generally build things. So people will say
Yeah.
whatever, and it's up to you and us to poke down. Do you mean decentralized? Do you mean trustless? And so yeah, we do get into those words. Yes, it can get boring. It's for your protection. It's for you to understand, like, if people mean what they say for real, and how you can poke at it from a point of view where this entire industry started from. So that's why we do it, and I think it's important. And if it's boring, well, I mean, there's a fast forward button.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
if
you
it's
have
boring, it's
chapters.
okay, right? I gave that quote about Zig Ziglar. I mean, if you don't want to learn, you're not going to learn. I'm paraphrasing it, but you also limit yourself. I don't know how to build excitement or encouragement except there needs to be some level of curiosity. If you're going to put your money into something or you're going to put time into something, I guess you should be curious too. And that's me being, I think I'm being a little too critical maybe on that, but still, it's how do you discern those differences? Trustless. How do you discern those differences? Decentralized. How do you discern those differences? Self custody. How do you discern those differences? Open participation as a validator or a miner. How do you discern those differences? What makes a blockchain more centralized or less centralized, right? So to decentralization. What does those things? If you can't answer those, you should start reading. And I think, Rob, you shared some very easy learning in the Telegram channel with that mastering blockchain or mastering Bitcoin.
Yeah,
What
I
was
gave
that?
three resources. One was mastering Bitcoin. There's also a Mastering Ethereum book. But Khan Academy for free has a blockchain course.
Yeah.
Brilliant.com has a blockchain course. I went through it. Actually, I'm still going through it just to see what's in there. And it kind of takes you through from a very kind of traditional trust-based economy, and it improves one little bit at each step so that it transforms into what blockchain how blockchain works, as a monetary system, through all the parts. So you learn what hashing is, and why you need it. You learn what keys are, and why they work. But it does it step by step by step, and I think for most people it's really good, transforming a monetary system from what you're used to what a blockchain monetary system and how it works. So there's a number of really good resources. A book costs like $30, I think,
But
and these other
free. I
are free.
push. I want to push as much free resources as possible.
Yeah,
You're already buying coins. Sure, $30 isn't a lot of money, but it could be. There
yeah,
are tons of free resources you can use. Tons if you
yeah.
just ask. That's it.
All right, let's get back to
Sorry.
Polkadot. That's okay. So, as you were mentioning, Polkadot is fixing something. Fundamentally, I think Polkadot has a center relay chain. When I say had a center relay chain, and then these parachains that were built off of it, very similar to the way the Cosmos kind of architecture. Part of the way that they were designed allowed for 100 of these other chains to be allowed, and they kind of like rent space on the relay chain in order to exist, and there's space for 100. I think it's pretty clear that with 10,000 chains already out there, that 100's not really a good number, right? And so they made some changes to make it more attractive. And the two things that they make attractive are that the new system allows for more of these parachains. I think there's a new number. I think it's 1,000. I think it's
Yeah,
not
if I
infinite.
may add a detail, I
Yeah,
believe initially they started with 20, and then
Mhm.
they bumped to 100, and they had the goal to add more, but
yeah,
their relay chain, that's basically how they call it, their hub,
yeah.
is not supporting adding more chains, and so
Right,
that's why they start this new jam update that is
right.
basically to address that.
Yeah. And so they did. So from my perspective, they did two things. One, they did this update to allow. I think they kicked the can down the road here, right? So it could do 100, and now it can do 1,000. I don't think they're actually claiming more than 1,000. Maybe they'll never fill the 1,000. But to me, like if they actually became popular, right? I don't think that 1,000's a good number either. I think that's not a great idea. Maybe they can kick the can down the road again later. I'm not sure, but having a number seems bad to me. That said, by having 1,000 chains working in parallel around a relay chain, they can claim very high transactions per second number because you aggregate it across 1,000 chains, and then they've got 1,000,000 TPS or something like that. So they're able to
That's
claim
right.
a new number by doing that, which
But we will see that they're making some very heavy some drawbacks on, like they are centralizing things, they
yes,
are making quorums of validators, so it is yeah, for us it is definitely not the right choices. We understand why they do that,
yeah,
especially that I think we have to look at Polkadot in like the industry that they are, right? Like they're competing with the Solana. Like that's the
yeah,
reality
Sure.
of Polkadot, right? And so of course they're trying to find a solution to keep
yeah.
scaling.
Well, that's the other
Um,
thing that they did, right? When you say competing with Solana, they put a virtual machine on their relay network.
yes,
So there's
yes.
smart
Correct.
contracts on the relay network, which begs the question: what do you need the parachains for?
So I think
Um,
it's not exactly smart contract, but it is something similar. It is
yeah,
one of those that are a little bit
Correct.
different but the same.
yeah. And so the way I kind of thought about it was you can try out a service using the smart contract platform, and then if it becomes popular, you can move to a relay chain. Like maybe that's the idea around it. I'm not really sure, but it seems like that would be a good way to do it because then you're staying within their ecosystem.
Mhm.
Um, they tout themselves as an interoperable ecosystem, but like it's sort of the same thing as Cosmos, right? It's interoperable within itself. Um,
Correct.
and so there's not really talk about kind of like pushing like the definitions of terms. It's not really what we mean by interoperable, is it? Right. So what we mean by interoperable is that things talk to each other, and so they've built bridges to other chains, right? So there's a Bitcoin Polkadot bridge. There's an Ethereum
Correct.
Polkadot bridge, and those bridges have the same problems as all other bridges. Is that like on their Bitcoin bridge, they've got I forgot what they call them, but there's vaults, right? And then you can be approved to be an owner of a vault, so you got to make sure you're a good person. And then what ends up happening is that people who want to send funds to the Polkadot from Bitcoin sends funds to you as a vault owner, and then there's a system in place by which from there it gets bridged to those funds appear on Polkadot in token form. So
It's
you
not
can I think it's
trustless, is
clear
what you're
that
saying.
the
Trust
trust
minimize
minimized.
again.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
that it's clear where the trust happens here, even though the trust has been split up over, people that they make sure are good people to be vault owners. But it's definitely not, it is not a trustless bridge. And it's certainly not a connection like Divi is proposing to connect layer one blockchains together with. Um, so
That's
that's
right. And
between Divi
yeah,
and Divi Side Chains and other people we want to get in there. Yeah, exactly.
It's it's on Jam. I know that Uniques were gonna say something, so I'm just gonna concur with what you said, because on Jam, the validators are there to enforce execution, and that means that we must trust parties. We must trust them because, people can participate in Jam, but you must register, and then you must stake your core time. So what does it mean, register? The minute we start forcing hurdles over anything, we are no longer what's called open participation. And then if we're locking it to where it's only registered parties, why are we locking it to registered parties? And the reason for that is because something in the system needs to be protected. It
Yeah.
needs to be protected because it can be attacked. And so then we make it so only certain people can do certain things if they meet certain requirements or know the right people. I'm just saying in life how that happens. It's no longer open. You don't need to worry about that in Divi. You don't need to worry about that in Litecoin. You don't need to worry about that in Bitcoin. The minute you start adding features and functions that require you to lock the network down in some way, it becomes centralized to protect it. There's a reason for that. It just drives me crazy. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
right.
I
So
agree.
to clarify the model, so basically they have their relay chain, and then they have the para chains, and then this jam chain is the
Jam
update,
chain.
right?
Mhm.
And then it's connected through those validators, and those validators, one of the big gray area is that the staking system, the validation system, all of that is not part of their white paper.
No.
To quote them, it is said the staking system is out of scope of the present work. Instead, there is an API which may be utilized to update the keys. And we presume that whatever logic is needed for the staking system will be
Yeah.
introduced and utilized in use this API. So
Yeah.
for something that is that critical about the connection is it's clearly scary, because basically what they say is that they hit a limitation, right, a bottleneck of decentralization. So one of the problem of decentralization is if you want to pass an information quickly, to be able to be validated by the network takes time. Like just this having
Yes.
consensus takes time. And to gain speed, they basically reduce the number of people which will be legitimate to validate. And then they can get to a consensus much faster. But now, so usually this is where you have some centralization and where you need to see some strong measure. But here they don't
Yes.
even tell you how they do it. So that's
No.
actually pretty concerning.
It's a
Um,
gray paper. I mean, they don't even have yet
it's very
in
great.
the core time because they don't have gas fees in the PVM or the jam system. They have, what is it? Core time. You have to actually purchase core time, right?
You rent time.
And then then the model is there are elves, kind of like with the little pointy ears and the green hats on, that have a selection process which determines which validators can process transactions.
Yeah. So
It's
there's
one
a couple
jumble
more.
right after another.
I've got kind of two more complaints about it, about especially about the ideas about interoperability. So in the Divi system, those side chains, they validate themselves.
Yes.
Whereas the way I'm understanding Polkadot is that their parachains are not independent.
It's validator approved, everything.
That's right. And
And
and the jam chain is not either. It is also dependent on the
yeah,
relayer
Correct.
chain.
yeah. So that, to me, there's a little house of cards possible there. Now that said, their staking protocol, it's called nominated proof of stake, which is supposed to improve upon delegated proof of stake. So if you remember EOS or Steam, I think Hive now, Tron, certainly, these are all delegated proof of stake. So you own coins and then you delegate your coins and you're essentially voting for which nominator you think which validator you think should be validating the chain. And then usually they choose 21, right? So in Polkadots, they got this nominated proof of stake where you're still kind of like pointing your coins at different nominators that you think reward you best, or do the
Yeah.
best. Right? There's a whole website for that, and you point your coins at them. But then their system, it's not 21. Their system ends up cycling through all the people who are nominated the most. So it's a little bit more decentralized. But that said, the relay chain, I think it has like 300 validators. I think it's still not this hugely decentralized blockchain,
Yeah.
and all those validators, have to go through a process. And my final point on this is, like Solana, validating the equipment to validate Tron and other DPoS chains are pretty significant. The equipment required to validate Ethereum is pretty significant. It's not for all of
Oh yeah.
us, to do.
Yeah.
And the equipment to validate Polkadot is also pretty significant. So it's not. It's again not this thing. Even if there weren't rules about who could validate, there's definitely kind of like, there's a certain amount of people who could participate in the validation simply because of the hardware costs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
having an Ethereum node on a data center is more than $1,000 a month.
Yeah, exactly.
So
That's
it
so
is
crazy.
definitely not for everybody.
Yeah, and these are all the same. I think Solana's, of the group that I mentioned, I think Solana's are the worst. But
A validator on Ethereum though is less expensive because you don't. But the full node to have like
yeah,
the full blockchain is
yeah,
definitely that. And again, that's only when you have that the full blockchain that you can actually make sure that it is legitimate, right? That
yeah,
again, this is really a strong component. I also wanted to get the attention of people on one word or three letters in what I read, which is API. When
yeah,
you see an
Oh yeah.
API somewhere in anything that is supposed to be decentralized, it is not. Like an API is 100% centralized. It's controlled by one entity who can change that anytime, right? So it is, and they always do that like in a little sentence, and then up they go back to, yeah, we're all trustless. So these are small things that you should spot in reading a white paper. Um, Even like that white paper is actually extremely complex. Like they
Correct.
go through some problems of the industry, and they actually point it right. Like in reality, they're very aligned with the problems that we point out. However, the solution they come with is the same. Like it's the same kind of thing, just a
Complicated.
little bit different, like
Yep.
just a new shape a little bit. But yes, it is still like they basically have the relay chain that is a central hub, and then now they have this jam chain, which is like Ethereum, right? They're trying to build that thing, and then it can um, uh, compress whatever is happening so that it can still be verified on their relay chain, right? So it is still the same kind of model that we've seen, and as you mentioned, Rob, it is extremely risky. Like if there is any problem, like we've seen on more and more blockchains now that they stop, I mean, now the whole thing completely stops, right?
Yeah.
So
And
I want to give everybody who's going to listen most likely a real life example. When Neeg says API, he means a source, usually a central source. Can be a couple that could be backed up or cached or something, but an API is a source that you call and you get information from because you can't get the information and you don't store the information. You trust somebody else. For those who had the Divi mobile wallet from Divi Labs, your mobile wallet on your phone doesn't open up anymore. Why? Because it uses an API. If
That's right.
Exodus or Trust Wallet or this, just name any light wallet that you have on your phone right now, just about 99% of them will be using some form of an API, some server that it has to hit, or some data center that has a computer that has an endpoint that it just shares back that information. So when your mobile phone didn't work, that's essentially what Neeks is trying to speak about, is that all of these other computers managing the entire blockchain, that's scary because Divi Wallet wasn't the blockchain, didn't manage the blockchain, had nothing to do with the blockchain, but it helped you participate in some of the blockchain, and it went down because its API went down. If a blockchain is dependent upon some of its features, at least for now, currently on an API, it's not ready. It's just not ready. And if it were ready and they were using an API to support blockchain features and functions, that's scary. That is really, really, really scary. It's just not what you would want to do for a decentralized, distributed, open, participatory blockchain. You should have free access to the information.
And so where we differ is basically that there is no centralized, like Divi is not verifying anything for the side chains. Side chains are autonomous and
Correct.
they are connected to Divi. And in fact, and maybe we will get into that sometime, or maybe we aren't ready, but in fact, the side chains are the ones with the brain. Like they are the one making sure they keep the accounting clear.
Oh
and
yeah.
and so they basically don't rely on anything coming from elsewhere, and the Divi blockchain is not aware of what is happening on the side chain. They're not, while they're connected, they're able to connect to each other through the validators. They're not dependent from each other information
They're
sets,
not
basically,
reliant in
right?
that respect to
So
where
it's a
one can
very, very
influence the
different
other.
approach.
yeah.
The
So I want to point out something funny. If Polkadot can claim 1 million TPS because of the capabilities of their 1,000 parachains,
Right, right.
then Disney will be able to claim infinite TPS.
That's right.
Infinite.
That's
Yes.
exactly right. And not only that, right? Like here is another thing that I think is probably difficult to understand as a user, but for people who develop applications, first of all, a blockchain or a chain like the Jam chain, if we were to see some benefits of any of that, it could be a sidechain of Divi. Okay, we would
Yeah.
have no limitation on that. And the reason is there is no consensus limitation, there is no rule set limitation. Someone who would like to develop a use case on a sidechain is not limited by what Divi is. It will
Right.
just connect to it like as, money who can get
Yeah.
in and out to use the
Correct.
service, right? And so this really opens a lot more possibility. Like if you want to do something on Ethereum right now, or on Polkadot, like we were talking about, or on Solana, you basically have a tool set. And obviously, all those chains, they're trying to improve this tool set. For Divi, you don't need that, because basically every sidechain will have its own tool set for what it needs. And on top of being able to adapt to everything, it is also much more efficient, right? Because you don't have a bunch of tools that you don't need, that you need to keep in sync, because a blockchain has to keep always everything in sync. So it can be a lot more efficient in however it processes things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we covered it. I don't think there's more to really talk about.
And it
We're
was very
definitely not
technical.
calling it a blockchain.
Sorry.
Like it's what?
Yeah, I said, and
What?
he was very technical. Sorry.
Yeah, it was. It was. But we're definitely not calling it a shitty blockchain. We're not saying
No.
or
No,
anything like that. It's they're definitely, and they're out there now, right? It's just honestly I think the Divi kind of like mindset of what blockchain will look like is just different, and I think it's superior in many ways.
that's right.
And
I
those
agree.
ways are the important ways. Um, so we'll see how this goes. I'm pretty excited going forward.
And I think we can add that whatever we see, it's that again, right? Like a lot of the things they do, while we definitely are not aligned with their final result or the choices that they took, some components and from them and from others is the way we get to our
Yeah.
proposal for the industry, right? Like
Yeah.
without all
Mhm.
that, things don't come out of thin air.
Yeah.
Some things are definitely not ideal, but it is the path that they have taken, and it is a way for them to scale. And for us, it is also some kind of learning, right? To see what they went through, what solution that they found, to make sure that we don't end up in the same traps. And it kind of revalidates every time the fact that we really have a gem in hand, right?
Yep. Yep. Uh, yeah. Cool. So I think that's
Cool.
all we need to talk about.
I
Yeah,
think
I think that's
so.
it.
I think so.
Cool.
That's good.
All right, guys.
All
Okay.
right, Anthony.
Adiosers.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.